The Children's Bible, Judges 6 through 8. Gideon and the Midianites. In time the children of Israel went back to their evil ways. Because of this, the Lord delivered them into the power of the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites ravaged the land, and the children of Israel were obliged to live in dens in the mountains and in caves and fortified places. When the 7 years were up, an angel of the Lord came and sat under an oak in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite. His son Gideon was threshing wheat to hide from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." Gideon said to him, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all of his miracles which our fathers told us? Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? The Lord has forsaken us now and has given us up to the Midianites." The angel looked at him and said, "Go out in your strength, and you shall save Israel from the Midianites. Have I not sent you?" "If I have found favor in your sight," Gideon said to him, "show me a sign that it is you who are talking to me. Stay here until I come back, and bring a present and set it before you." "I will wait here until you come again," the angel said. So Gideon went in and prepared a young goat and some unleavened cakes. The meat he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and put it out to the angel and presented it to him. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth." Gideon did as he was commanded. Then the angel of the Lord stretched out the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes. And fire rose up out of the rock, and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. And the angel of the Lord disappeared from sight. When Gideon saw that this was indeed an angel of the Lord, he said, "Alas, O Lord God, I am frightened, because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face." But God said to him, "Be at peace, do not be afraid, you shall not die." Then Gideon built an altar to the Lord, and called it Yahweh Shalom, which means, "The Lord is peace." That same night God spoke to him again and said, "Take a 7-year-old bull from your father's herd, and go to the altar which your father has set up to Baal. Throw down the altar, and cut down the grove of trees that is by it. Then build an altar to the Lord God on top of the rock, and kindle a fire from the wood of the grove, and sacrifice the bull to the Lord." So Gideon took 10 of his servants, and did as the Lord had commanded him to do. He dared not do it in the daytime for fear of the villagers and the rest of his father's household, so he did it under cover of night. The next morning the villagers saw what had happened. When they discovered that Gideon was responsible for the pulling down of Baal's altar, they went to Joash and said, "Bring out your son, for he must die." But Joash defended Gideon and said, "Do you have to plead for Baal, who is a god? If any of you dare to, let him be put to death at once. Instead, let Baal speak for himself." Then the Midianites and the Amalekites banded together and camped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and all the men flocked to his side. Gideon spoke to the Lord, saying, "If you will save Israel by my hand, give me a token. Behold, I shall put a fleece of wool on the floor, and if the dew is on the fleece only, and all the earth beside it is dry, I shall know that you mean me to save Israel." The next morning he rose early, and wrung a bowl full of water out of the fleece. But still he doubted, and said, "Do not be angry with me, but grant me yet one more sign. Let the fleece be dry, and upon all the ground let there be dew." And the Lord did so that night, for only the fleece was dry, and there was dew on all the ground. Then Gideon assembled an army of the men of Israel behind him. They pitched their tents beside the well of Harod, so that the ranks of the Midianites were off to the north of them by the hill of Moreh, in the valley. And God said to Gideon, "The people with you are too many for me to give them a victory over the Midianites, for then Israel might boast of its own power, saying, 'Our own hands have saved us.' Go to the people, therefore, and tell everyone that is fearful and afraid to go back and to leave Mount Gilead." 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 stayed. Then God spoke to Gideon, saying, "There are still too many people. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you. If I say, 'This one shall go with you,' he shall go with you. And if I say, 'This one shall not go with you,' he shall not go." So Gideon brought the people down to the water. And God said to Gideon, "Set apart those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps, and those who kneel down to drink." The number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouths, was 300 men. All the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink the water. Then God said to Gideon, "By the 300 men who lapped, I will save you, and will deliver the Midianites into your hands. Let all the other people go to their homes." So the chosen people took food in their hands and their trumpets, and Gideon sent all the rest of the Israelites to their tents, and kept only those 300 men. And the army of Midian was beneath in the valley. The same night God spoke to Gideon, saying, "Arise, go down to the camp, for I have given it into your hands. But if you are afraid to go down, take your servant Purah down with you to the camp. You will hear what the Midianites are saying, and afterwards your hands will be strengthened for the battle." Gideon went down with Purah to the outermost armed men that were in the camp. There the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers in their numbers, and their camels were countless, as many as the sands by the seaside. When Gideon came near, a man was telling a dream to his companion, and he said, "I have dreamed a dream, and in it a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian. It came to a tent and struck it, so that the tent fell and overturned, and lay upon the ground." His companion answered and said, "This is nothing else than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for God is giving him a victory over Midian and all the army." When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation of it, he worshipped God. Then he returned to the army of Israel and said, "Arise, for the Lord has given into your hands the army of Midian." He divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand, and gave them empty pitchers with lights inside them. "Watch me and do likewise," he said to them, "and see that when I come to the outskirts of the camp you do whatever I do. When I and those who are with me blow on our trumpets, then you blow on your trumpets too, on every side of the whole camp, and shout, 'The sword of the Lord and of Gideon!'" So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp, in the beginning of the middle watch, when a new watch had just been posted. Then they blew on their trumpets, and broke the pitchers that were held in their hands. And the 3 companies all blew on their trumpets, and broke the pitchers, and held the lights in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands. And they cried, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon!" They stood, every man in his place, round about the camp, and all the army of Midian awoke, and cried out. The 300 blew on their trumpets, and through the whole army of the Midianites the Lord made men turn their swords one against another, and they fled in confusion. The men of Israel pursued them beyond Jordan, killing their leaders, Oreb and Zeb. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Be our ruler, you and your son's sons, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian." But Gideon said, "I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. But I have one request to make of you. Will you all give me the gold earrings that you took from your prey?" For the Midianites were Ishmaelites, and wore gold rings in their ears. The men of Israel said, "We give them willingly." They spread a cloak on the ground, and every man cast in the earrings that he had taken from his victims. The weight of the earrings amounted to 1,700 shekels of gold, and there were also ornaments and collars and purple raiment from the kings of Midian, and the chains which had been round their camels' necks. And Gideon took all of these, and put them in his city of Ophrah. Thus was Midian utterly conquered by the children of Israel, and the country lived in peace for 40 years during the life of Gideon.